Okay, hi everybody. Here we are again, time for another geography lesson video. Today we're moving on from waterfalls that we did earlier in the week to look at the formation of meanders and oxbow lakes. This is a classic bit of geography. So your first task to do is a little bit of a recap activity on the PowerPoint for you. Here's the long profile of a river, and I want you to look at these statements here and decide whether they describe the upper course or the lower course. None of them describe the middle. Do they describe the upper or lower course? And just have a go at that on a scrap of paper and see if you get them right. The answers are on the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to not show you that, but try and be strict with yourself. Don't show yourself the answers until you've done it. Okay. Then we're going to go into learning about meanders. So what is a meander? This is a meander. It's a bend in a river. Okay, the fancy name for it is a meander, a big bend in the river like this. These are usually found in the middle course of a river where it's starting to get wider and the land on either side of the river, the valley, is getting flatter. Okay, and they're caused by a mixture of two processes: erosion, and it's lateral erosion taking place here. That's the sideways erosion, and that's what causes the river to move sideways across the land. And the other process going on is deposition, where the material that the river is carrying gets dropped off along its route. There's a video clip here for you to watch. Just watch this section of it. If you want to watch more of it, that's absolutely fine. There's an interesting bit beforehand about waterfalls that you might want to watch. But this section here that's listed is the most relevant for you. So we want to know today how these are formed. How are meanders caused and formed? Okay. Now, I've given up using that whiteboard because I've decided the pens are too rubbish. So I'm going to pen and paper now. Okay. If you've got a meander, a bend in a river, this is my bend in the river here. Okay, not very well drawn. The current, that's the flow of the water through the river, isn't equal. Now imagine the situation where you're in a car and you go around a bend a little bit too quickly and you're sat in the back of the car. Okay, and what happens is you get kind of thrown or pushed over to one side of the car, don't you? And the same thing happens to the water in a river. Okay, the fastest flow of water is always on the outside of a river bend. So water kind of goes like this down my river. Okay, it's flowing towards the outside of the river bend. And because of that, you get more erosion taking place in these areas. Here, here, and if I drew this going like that, then we'd have more erosion taking place here as well. Because that's where you've got the water hitting that river bend with much more force. And on the inside of the river bends, here, here, and here, the water's moving much more slowly. So we know that deposition takes place where rivers are moving more slowly. So we get erosion here on the outside of the river bend, and we get deposition here on the inside of the river bend. Okay, if you want to stretch yourself a bit, this idea that the water flows like this from side to side through the river, that's called the thalweg. It's really an A-level term. Okay, but this idea that the river, the flow of current in the water is fastest on the outside of the bend. It's called the thalweg. Now, because you've got more erosion taking place here on the outside, it leads to a feature called a river cliff. So river cliffs form on the outside of river bends. And on the inside of a river bend, you end up with something called a slip-off slope. So slip-off slopes form on the inside of a river bend. Okay. And it looks a bit like this. So here I've got my line demonstrating where the fastest current is in the river, coming like this towards the outside, the thalweg. So you've got the fastest flow here, so it's hitting this outside bit and causing lots of erosion here, creating this steep, see that steep bank there? That bit is called the river cliff. And then on the inside of the river bend, where the water's flowing much more slowly, there's more friction, the water is going slowly because it's got less energy, there's a lot of deposition happening, and that's what's caused this like little pebbly beach here on the inside of the river meander. Okay, this is called the slip-off slope, this bit here, where it's all pebbly, where all that load that the river's carrying has been deposited. Now see this bit here at the front of this diagram? This is like a cross section through the river bend or meander. So let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. Okay, so if this is my river doing a cross section through the river, okay, this is the channel, the river channel, the bit that the river's flowing in. Okay, this is the outside here of a river bend, and this is the inside. So the current is flowing fastest here, and it's flowing slowest here. It's much deeper here, so there's less friction, so the water flows faster. Here, there's much more friction slowing the water down. That's why it flows more slowly. Okay, here's my water. This is the channel, outside, fast, inside, slow. And that's why here I've got this steep bank being formed, my river cliff. And on the inside here, I've got deposition happening, which leads to the slip-off slope being formed. So this is erosion on the outside, creating a river cliff, and this is deposition on the inside, causing a slip-off slope. Okay, as you will have seen in the video, over time the location of a meander changes slightly. It can migrate kind of across a floodplain, across the land. It changes location. So if we imagine that this is kind of our river in stage 1, nice meandering river here. Okay, in stage 1 we've got lots of erosion happening here and here, and actually here as well, on the outsides of these river bends. This section of land here in between, going all blurry for some reason, this section of land here in between is called the neck of the meander. The narrow bit in between two bends of a river is called the neck of a meander. And because you've got this erosion happening here and here, over time the river changes location. Okay, and that neck section gets narrower. This is really a test of my drawing skills here under pressure. There we go. Okay, so you see that neck has got much narrower. We've still got erosion happening here and erosion happening here. The neck narrows over time. And you can see what's going to happen eventually. You've seen it in the video. Eventually, you end up with a river with this going on. Okay, this is called a meander cut off, because it has literally been cut off from the rest of the river. This erosion here and here has broken through. That neck has been taken away, and this bit that was part of the river is now cut off from the rest of the river. And to start with, I mean, water could flow around there if it wanted to, but water is just going to flow like this. It's going to take the fastest route and flow like this down here. So you still got water in here, but it's very slow moving. It's stagnant water. That means it's not really moving anywhere. So in here, you start to get any little bits of sediment that are being carried in the river starting to sink down to the bottom, and you get deposition happening. And this becomes a bit like a marsh, and then gradually over time it gets drier and drier and drier, and eventually it dries out. Okay, normally these bits here dry out and turn into land. This bit here is probably left still with water in it, and this bit looks like a magnet now, doesn't it? This bit here that's left, this is called an oxbow lake. Okay, so that's the formation of meanders and then oxbow lakes. On the last slide of the PowerPoint here, there are 3 tasks for you to do, and they kind of mirror the tasks that I've just done. So number 1, draw and label an aerial view of a meander, aerial meaning from above. Okay, so that's like this here. Draw a version of this, and I want you to make sure that it's got all of these words on it. I like you to write descriptions rather than kind of single words. So try and make your labels sentences rather than just words like this. Okay, and try and use all of these words. Remember thalweg, that's a really difficult word. It means this line of arrows where the current is flowing. Okay, so try and write sentences for your labels. That's task 1. Task 2, to draw a diagram of a cross section. That's where you're taking like a slice through. It looks like this. Again, make sure you've got these words included in your labels, and try and write your labels as sentences. And then last of all, a series of diagrams, just like I did, to explain how a meander turns into an oxbow lake. And again, use these words here in your labels, but try and make your labels sentences. Okay, some of you have been sending me your work electronically, which you're absolutely fine to do. You don't have to submit this work at the moment. I'll be setting you a piece of work soon that has to be submitted, but this doesn't. But if you want me to see it, then that's great, and I really like seeing the work that you're doing. It's really nice to see how hard some of you are working. Any questions, like usual, just email me and I'll get back to you. But that's the formation of meanders and oxbow lakes. Enjoy!